Everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for this important discussion centered around professional mentoring and leveraging LinkedIn profile for your career success. This is the third session in the Student Employee Professional Development Pilot Project, and I'm happy to share that many of our student employees of the division have really caught on to LinkedIn learning or to learning new skills and gaining new knowledge using LinkedIn Learning. And we selected two of the top learners for this month to give them a chance to interact with experts. Let me start by introducing them. Ms. Gail Flores, who is currently a graduate student um, um, working on her MBA at UTRGV. And joining her in this session is Mr. Martin Lopez, undergraduate student studying mechanical engineering at UTRGV. Now it's time to introduce expert panel members, starting with one of our own, Dr. Thomas Spencer, who serves as the Associate VP for Research Operation at UTRGV. And Dr. Spencer is passionate about serving as a professional mentor and has mentored many young professionals to help them develop and evolve in their career. We also are joined by Mr. Darren Nelson, who is the consulting manager at Huron and has utilized LinkedIn very effectively to find talents. He is going to share his insights on how to create a functional profile on LinkedIn and what hiring managers look for in skills when they review somebody's LinkedIn profile. I also want to take this opportunity to share some highlights about the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, otherwise known as UTRGV. We are the second largest Hispanic serving institution in the nation, first among Texas institutions for awarding the most undergraduate 4-year degrees to Hispanics, second nationally, and the first among Texas institutions for awarding the most graduate degrees to Hispanics, and fourth nationally. First among Texas institutions for awarding the most biology and biomedical sciences bachelor's degree to Hispanics, and second nationally. And we're also the top 10 producer of Hispanic physics and engineers in the United States. So without any further ado, I want to get started with today's discussion with Ms. Gail Flores asking her first question to the experts. Go ahead, Gail.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And to kick off this conversation, I want to ask, what's the best career advice that you've ever received from a mentor? Mr.
Sure.
Nelson?
Actually, this question goes to Dr. Spencer, right?
Oh,
Please go.
my apologies. My apologies.
No, no worries. No worries. This is a conversation. I'm happy to work. So I will say that probably the best piece of information I've ever received from a mentor in regards to my career is raise your hand. I know it sounds simple, but ask for help and ask to help. If you are in a group of peers and there is someone who raises their hand and asks to try something new or asks to push their boundaries, it's a great way to explore opportunities in your career. You might find something that you enjoy doing, or you might find out that you don't want to do that. But either way, that's a valuable lesson. Another tool that I use and another piece of advice I've received from mentors are ask for informational interviews. Oftentimes in our busy world, you can't job shadow as much as you might have done in the past. So I think most people are open to the idea of asking for an informational job interview. If you have someone who may want you to be your mentor, ask them, what do they do? What is a normal day? What is a normal week? Or what does a normal year look like? What do they really enjoy about their job? And what do they wish that they could improve upon? Um, Other advice is connect with people who are interested in sharing that information in your field. Network and find common interests. We have so many tools that are available to us: LinkedIn Learning, conferences, opportunities. Network with the people who share your common interest and learn how to sell yourself. Um, all of those things will really drive your career, and a mentor can help you with that. And finally, and then I'll let Darren chime in, I think it's important to know yourself. What is a piece of career advice that a mentor has given me? Know who I am. Everyone says work on your weaknesses, but I think it's important that we work on our weaknesses and our strengths. And in order to do that, you have to know yourself. And you can do all of that by finding a mentor and using a mentor to guide your career. Darren, any suggestions, any comments on that?
No, I echo everything Thomas says. And what I would say is a mentor is really for you. And so to Thomas's point about really knowing yourself, you really need to know what you want to get out of that relationship before you get into it. And I think that the more specific you can be about what it is you're looking for, the more you'll get out of it and the easier it is for the mentor as well.
That's a great point.
Absolutely. You guys shared some great points. I think self-branding is what the first two webinar sessions actually covered. And those two webinar sessions, if you haven't already visited them and seen them, I highly recommend those. Those actually helped me kick off my own LinkedIn platform, and meeting the speakers and panel members with those and actually getting mentored by them is what actually brought me here today. Martin?
Great.
Sorry, technical difficulties, everybody. Yeah, I would say, what's it called? So for the second question, Dr. Spencer, what techniques do you find successful in forming these mentors and mentee relationships, or even describe, a personal experience you've had for
Absolutely.
yourself? Yeah.
Of course, and thank you, Martin. Great question. I think Darren touched on it a little bit, but I think it's important when you go into a mentor-mentee relationship to know what you're looking for. What do you want to accomplish? You need to introduce yourself and ask what you're trying to get out of any kind of relationship. The relationship between a mentor and a mentee is different depending on how you're approaching somebody. So how do you find a mentor or mentee? It's different if you're working with somebody or if you know them online. I think a lot of people might blind ask someone on LinkedIn, hey, are you going to be my mentor? That would probably turn off a lot of people. So as we said earlier, go back to the first couple of webinars here. There's some really good tips about how to reach out to people on LinkedIn to make sure that you're asking them something to do first rather than just reaching out and saying, hey, can you be my mentor? Make a connection. I think that's important. Another thing, make sure that we're not mistaking mentoring for coaching. And I think that can be a misstep for a lot of people. Mentoring is often long-term and it's often informal engagement. Your mentor may not even really know that they're a mentor. You might just ask them questions and you might be able to get information out of them in a conversational way, but there may not be a term. You may not have branded them your mentor, and that's okay. Additionally, I think it's important that, and I think we talked a little bit about this, that mentees, the people who are being mentored, asking for that, must drive the relationship. You are the owner of this relationship, so you must come prepared to talk about what you want. What do you want to accomplish? We'll go back to that. Now, mentoring is a two-way street, and I think that's important. Both sides of the relationship will learn something, and that's great. But you need to understand that most people, and not everyone, knows how to be an established mentor. You might not want to reach out to them and ask, can you be my mentor? Ask them what they're comfortable sharing. Some people may not be available or interested. And if they're not interested, don't force the issue. And some mentors might be good at some parts of mentoring and they might not be the best at others. Some people might be a great advocate, but a poor role model. Some might be a great advisor, but they're still learning how to manage their own work-life balance. So you need to be careful in what you're asking for. It's okay to be forward, but you need to make sure that you are following a path that will get you what you need and what you want to accomplish. And finally, I think it's important as you're trying to develop mentorships, be resilient, develop that resilience, be prepared to be rejected. If you reach out to someone and ask them a question and you don't hear anything back, don't take it personally. It's okay. If you need to be able to develop the term next. If you reach out to someone and they don't have the time for you, that's okay. There are other people you can ask. There are other relationships you can build. So be comfortable in knowing that you may not be able to form a mentee-mentor relationship with the exact person you're looking for, but there is someone out there for you. And Darren, I'll bolster my argument, please.
Without a doubt. Next is an important thing, and to not take it personally. Again, you never know what the other person on the other side is going through. They have their own daily responsibilities, their own job. And to Thomas's point, they may not be comfortable mentoring. I would also add just one other thing to that. Know who you're asking to mentor you. So for instance, I wouldn't go to somebody whose entire background is in finance to ask them to help mentor me to learn more about HR, right? So make sure that, and this goes back to kind of knowing what you want the mentoring for, make sure that you're reaching out to mentors where their area of expertise is what it is you're looking for. And I think you'll get a lot further along than just a generic. And again, I think Dr. Spencer hit it really well that you'll need different mentors for different things, but you really want somebody that you're excited to work with. And when you express that enthusiasm about them and you know enough about them, then it makes them more excited to want to work with you as opposed to just a blind ask. So
let me add something else to this. I personally see mentoring as a very organic process. You know, when the mentor is generally interested in the young professional students, whoever they're working with, that'll come naturally. You know what I'm saying? So the students have to be alert to catch signals like that, where the supervisor is actually becoming a lot more interested in their professional journey and giving some feedback, constructive feedback on their work, and showing interest in their future goals and things like that. Those are telltale signs to look for, especially when they're students and working on campus with different type of supervisors. This pilot that has resulted in these workshop series actually was designed in such a way that supervisors were also given a chance to learn how to be mentors. So some of our students that are part of this pilot would have begun to notice some of those supervisors that have taken this task seriously, and they might have begun to notice this transition. So that's a good time to catch up on that and begin to have more in-depth discussions with those supervisors.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Of
You
course,
guys
yeah.
mentioned some great points, especially the fact about getting rejected. Because I know, like, people in my area, I'm 22, and I sometimes have a fear of getting rejected. And if it's by a professional, it's going to be like a little worse than like other rejection areas.
Of
But you
course.
guys mentioned a lot of good points. Now, with that also leads me to my next question. Did you have a mentor throughout your career? And if you did, what was its effect on you? Was it good? Was it bad? What'd you learn?
That's a great question. The answer is absolutely. Did I have a mentor? Yes, I've had multiple mentors. I don't think that very many successful people get as far as they do without some form of mentoring. And it may not be professional mentoring, and it may not even be formal mentoring, but I think you need that. It's reaching out to someone who knows what you want to do when you grow up. So yes, I thought about this, and have I had different mentors? Absolutely. Most of my mentors have been about 5 to 10 years ahead of me in my career, but that's not always been the case. And so I actually did some like soul searching. I went back and looked over my career, and I had one mentor who really taught me how to be a teacher, how to explain information and share it with others. I had one mentor who taught me how to be a servant leader. She was exceptionally good at being a leader of people, and she taught me how to do that. I had one mentor who taught me how to listen and then how to respond. I had one mentor who taught me about human resources, how to interview and how to be on both sides of that table. I had one mentor who was much younger than I was, actually lower in the org, but he taught me excitement. He taught me modern diversity, equity, and inclusion skills. So you don't always have to learn from people who are older than you. You need to find someone who knows the skill set that you want to learn.
Yes.
And then one mentor, and I think this is funny, taught me that he was a bad mentor. And that was okay. And I learned that it was okay to change that relationship. Just because I was in a relationship with a mentor didn't mean that I had to stick it out if that person didn't get me where I needed to go. And so I had to have a hard conversation. But in the end, there was no hurt feelings, and I learned something that day. So I think that's important. There can be multiple mentors for multiple needs. So
Wow, you actually had to like establish that boundary that you weren't actually progressing with that mentor. Wow.
absolutely. It was a hard conversation, and it took me a couple months to realize that what I thought I was going to be able to get from that relationship. And what we had talked about just wasn't going to be there. And it wasn't because, they weren't good at what they were doing. It was just because we had a different mindset. It just didn't mesh. And, I didn't want to continue with that I thought would waste his time and would not provide me anything. So eventually I put together my notes on paper, my thoughts. And during one of our sessions, it was hard, but I brought up the fact that this might be the end of this relationship. And so we had a conversation about what we had learned, what was good from it, and that it was just time. And that was okay. But that everyone's going to have their own path. But that was a tough one. But we
Yeah.
went through it together.
Definitely. I can only imagine having to establish that type of relationship end. You're part of a professional environment and it hurts just to be rejected alone and like establish that cutoff point. I get it. Now, Mr. Nelson, did you ever experience anything like that?
Not only did, but have and still do. I still have mentors to this day. I have a really great one that has become a great friend. And he still advises me. And to Thomas's point, it was interesting. He was my formal boss at one point, but the part that I got from him for mentoring is because I appreciated that he had a skill that I didn't, which was he led a very large organization and made really tough decisions, but was still very nice when he did it. And at the C-suite, that was a very rare occurrence. And so I wanted to learn from him how to maintain that balance. So again, part of it for me was just, I look at someone and go, wow, they do this really, really well. I'd like to just learn more about it. But what I also have found over the years, especially from my long-term mentors, Dr. Spencer being one of them, we actually end up learning a lot from each other over the years. Mm-hmm. So I would, when we say it's a two-way street, it may start out one way. I think you will be pleasantly surprised that a lot of mentors will want to hear what you have to say and your opinions on certain topics when they start to see your talents as well. Be open to that. I will say I'm a bit with Dr. Spencer on, I had a boss who wanted to be a mentor and thought he was a mentor. And it was not his skill set or forte. And I probably didn't handle it nearly as directly or gracefully as Dr. Spencer. And I was just, wow, thank you so much. Have a great day. And then I didn't set up the next meeting. Right. I appreciate all that you've given me to this point. I think I'm good. Have a great day. You're awesome. And then I just didn't schedule another one, right? And they just assumed that I got what I needed. We all went on.
Oh, wow. You just created that point that communication is definitely needed, no matter how subtle it can be. Like, it's always needed. It can never be underappreciated.
Well, and definitely don't ghost them, even the bad ones.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. I would hate to be ghosted at that point. But
the way sorry to interrupt, but the way I see it, in the professional world, we can never take things too personally, especially rejection, ghosting, and even like an experience from a bad mentor as well. And the way I see it, we really need to learn from ourselves, like not to take things too personally, because that's part of life and part of like something as a professional we need to grow at. That's how I see it. I don't know if you, Dr. Spencer, or Mr. Nelson see it that way, but I feel like it's just something that people have to grow and learn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to add something to what Martin just said. I personally don't think there is such a thing as a bad mentor. Either they're exceptionally good at it or they're learning. So, and this also goes back to something that we all talked about just a couple of minutes ago. So just mentoring relationship, just like any other professional relationship, it goes through, there's a beginning, there's an end. As you evolve as students, especially right now, you might have the need to have a mentor who understands, who's not too far off from you professionally speaking in your career ladder or career journey. So as you evolve and grow and move on to different positions and move up the career ladder, whatever, your needs will change too, as far as what you want to gain from that mentor. So just like any other relationship, mentoring also has its own journey. You know what I'm saying? So it's important to acknowledge, though, when someone has taken that special interest in you and have chosen to become your mentor and has taken you through that process. When you feel the need to have a different type of mentor, it's really important to acknowledge what you've gained from that mentor, because it really serves well for that mentor to feel good that they've made a difference for someone. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times people forget to acknowledge that relationship and acknowledge the gain that they've had from that relationship. So it's very, very important for mentees to keep that in mind and to acknowledge that before they move on to somebody else who might serve their needs differently or better in the future. So I just want to kind of add that thought as well. So great questions you guys are asking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is a really good topic that you brought up, Miss Pat. And I feel like this question that we just got in the comments could
yeah.
also pertain to this topic before we switch over to the LinkedIn platform topic. Now, the
I might
question
have
is,
answered her question. Yeah, it says, how can someone recognize when it's time to transition into a mentor, into the mentor role? So yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
definitely.
Who wants to take that question?
Well, I'll start and I'll let Darren chime in.
Sure.
I think that it's important to note that you may never have a formal transition where you add mentor to your resume. If you are willing to take the time and teach somebody else something, or give someone a safe space where they can be honest and share things with you, or things that are currently frustrating them, and you help them provide some guidance, then you are a mentor. That's it. I mean, you've started that role. So when can you take the time to transition into a mentor? Anytime you're ready, anytime you feel like you want to. You can learn what actual mentoring is. You can go on YouTube, you can go on LinkedIn Learning and see what people do about formal structure and framework. But really, it comes down to, are you willing to? Are you able to give that person that time? So I'll leave it at that. Darren, what about you? What do you think about when do you formally transition into a mentor?
I think you've hit it, Thomas. I think that a lot of people will assume that this is a formal program or a formal moment or a formal title, and it's not. We mentor, as a matter of fact, I would guess that everybody that is on this call today provides mentoring already. There is some kid in school, there is some other peer, there is some person on a project who asked you for advice somewhere at some point in time, and you gave it with an open and caring heart, then you've been a mentor. I would just focus on the same thing that Thomas just said, help people. I'm going to go out and help people. People help me. I want to be available to help others. And I think to Ms. Bott's original conversation, you'll see that it happens organically over time.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I feel like mentoring should have like an equation. Mentor relationships equals help to and from. It's like a give and take of help. You know, I had more mentor relationships that I didn't actually formally come out and say, "Can you be my mentor?" It was
Mm-hmm.
just, I was passionate about the topic. I wanted to learn more. I had someone that could give me advice free of charge, passionately, you know, just like how you guys were mentioning it.
Like it just happened naturally. Like I feel like that's the key point about being a mentor in a mentee relationship. Because if it's not
And
natural, it's not gonna happen, or it's not gonna progress as it should be.
yeah, and sometimes you end up telling, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sometimes you end up telling someone that they are your mentor. They may not have realized it, but you might bestow that title upon them after a number of conversations or a number of years of working with them. You might say, you know what, you are my mentor. Thank you so much for teaching me X, Y, and Z. They may not have ever realized that that was their role that they were playing, but you can bestow that title on people who've earned it.
Great point. So let's switch gears now to move on to LinkedIn profile related questions. I know our student panel members have some questions about that as well, right? Yes.
So, Mr. Nelson, for the next question, what general skills would you recommend developing to advance careers more quickly? Oh, my bad. I read the wrong transcript. What qualities can people exhibit to give themselves an advantage over peers for hiring companies?
So great question. I'll preface it by saying, first of all, for the folks on the call, just so you have some background, I ran large talent acquisition organizations, and my teams hired thousands of people. So I've sat on the other side of the table for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you apply to a job, 300 other people have applied to that job. So you really need to understand what your competitive advantage is. And if you don't have one, you need to start building one. So that's a couple of things to think about. But the things that will start to set you apart from peers, especially when they come into organizations directly out of college and they don't have a lot of work experience yet, you need to really understand business. Every industry requires the understanding of business, profit, loss, what are my costs, what's revenue, right? And the reason I said that, so even if we think about an art career, you're going to be independently employed. You're going to have to know how to read contracts. Are you getting a good deal? Are you not getting a good deal? Even if you're going to be an influencer, what kind of advertising revenue are you getting from YouTube? So understanding business is going to be a key critical skill that you're going to have to know no matter what industry you ever go into, and that'll put you at a big advantage. I would say a couple of the other things that will give you an advantage over others. And again, the reason I'm talking just in generalities is because your LinkedIn will be reflective of your resume, which is reflective of your personal brand. This is what you're good at. Understanding data. People pull reports all the time and have no idea what it says. And when a leader goes, okay, so what, right? What is this telling us? To be able to understand that will go a long way in helping you set yourself apart from others. And the last piece I'll probably end with here to think about is a hiring manager on the other side of the table. And this is going to sound a little cold, but I think it'll be useful for you. They're only focused on how you're going to help them solve their problems. They are not focused on you and your career desires or anything else. They're trying to figure out, when I hire this person, how is this candidate going to help me solve these problems? So the easier you can make that for hiring managers by showing good results, quantitative achievements, showing off your problem-solving skills, that's going to make that conversation easier and help you start to get past recruiters and make your LinkedIn stand out among others. So with that, Dr. Spencer, what are some of your thoughts on it?
Well, Darren, I think you did a great job of talking about, but I think it's important to be proactive about displaying your accomplishments and your achievements over your career. People always say, prepare for the next job that you want. So on your LinkedIn and on your public profile, make sure that you are being proactive about displaying your achievement. I know sometimes it's hard to talk about the things that you've done, but you need to be able to do that. You need to talk about your accomplishments. HR hiring managers don't want to read a job description of the job that you did last. That they can get that from another place. They want to know what you did and how you can help them solve their problems. I also think it's important to make sure that you have a public profile on LinkedIn. I was asked a couple of weeks ago to go review a possible candidate, and when I went to their LinkedIn page, it was entirely private. I couldn't see their picture. I couldn't see what they were doing. I couldn't see anything about them other than that they had a LinkedIn profile. And since I'm not in HR, I don't have the ability to get into the back end of LinkedIn. So I was unable to review it. And so whether or not they were a good candidate or a poor candidate, I just couldn't tell. So they immediately went to the bottom of the pile where I just couldn't look at it. So I think that's important.
Wow. Okay. So, Mr. Nelson, you had mentioned about wanting to stand out to these recruiters, these hiring companies, and so did you, Dr. Spencer. So that brings us to our next question. What general skills would you recommend for people to develop, specifically new students that just graduated, they're getting their foot in the workforce, to advance their career more quickly or to get more noticed, by hiring companies?
Yeah, so I think it would reiterate generally on what we had talked about a second ago about understanding business, understanding data, but really solving problems. So you need to, if you don't already have the skill set where you know how to really identify a problem, and I know that sounds easy. We go, well, we already know what the problem is. You would be surprised how many times people don't really understand what the problem is, and they start to treat symptoms, not the root cause. So they haven't learned good problem-solving techniques. Like, if you aren't familiar with Lean Six Sigma, I highly suggest going and reading about 5 whys, right? and just keep asking the question why 5 times, and you'll probably get to the real root cause. But understanding and learning how to do real problem solving, I think, is going to be a critical skill that not only do you need to be able to learn it, but then to be able to demonstrate it. And I think that'll help build those accomplishments Dr. Spencer was talking about. Communication skills. So one of the challenges that all of us are going to have in the workforce is you've got a large gap of generations that are all in the workforce together. You have to be able to communicate to somebody where they're at, not where you're at least if you want to be effective. So, for instance, as a manager who manages folks that may be newly coming into the workforce, I have to be open and learning to some of their short, crisp communication that comes from a world of text and Twitter and things where they're really concise in the things that they say. Whereas the new people coming into the workforce may also need to get familiar with some of the more, I would call it formal business communication that older generations respond to in the business communication. Because at the end of the day, communication is about being effective. And so all of us need to build that skill set to be able to communicate to whoever we're communicating to in a way that's effective. And that's going to be a critical skill to learn. So whichever ones you're comfortable in, go find the ones you're not, work on those. And I would say the last, and this goes back to what Dr. Spencer had talked about earlier. While I don't know that it's a skill, I will say it's going to be critical to success. Learn to raise your hand. And I'm going to put this in the context of college. How many of you guys have a project, you're on a team, you've been assigned with 4 other people, and the question comes up, okay, who wants to run this? How many hands go up? Right? The answer
Absolutely none.
Somebody's drawing straws. The other 3 people are stepping back. Those people are not getting promoted.
Yeah, that's how it is in my class in what's called. So for me as an engineering student, a lot of my peers, and I could say even for myself, we're sometimes even afraid to answer those questions because even the fear of just like not just rejection, but like being wrong, and it might feel embarrassing, but I feel like sometimes these questions does lead to like, maybe future employers should see, this person is interested, in going, doing the objectives of this job or even trying. And I feel like sometimes just trying, just shows, a good sense of like, I would say, like this person has moxie. And I see like not a lot of people have that nowadays, but at least I feel like students or even like future graduates should try at least.
I think you're bringing up a fantastic point, Martin. It's called courage, right? I will tell you the number one ingredient in any company that does any product development or entrepreneurship whatsoever of innovation is the ability to fail. And companies that are afraid to fail do not innovate. That's a fact. So they're looking for people who don't mind raising their hand, who don't mind jumping into the arena. And yeah, we all risk rejection. We all risk being wrong. But those are the ones that get promoted because those are the ones other people follow.
Absolutely. That you just hit it right on the money. I had that same problem as Martin described. And the one thing that helped me change my mindset was the fact that you have successes, you have wins, and then you have lessons. You never have a loss because you learn from it. You grow from it as a person. Even in the most subtle way, you still learn. And I feel like that is a key idea that a lot of people can benefit from just to gain that courage and step through the door and start promoting themselves better.
And I haven't heard anyone say this word, but I'll say it. Own it. When you have a misstep, own it. You had a misstep. That's okay. And when you need to go and talk to your boss about, hey, this didn't work as well as it could have, instead of just coming to them open-handed and saying, hey, this broke, come to them saying, this broke, here's why, and here are a couple solutions. If you come to your boss with an understanding of what we were trying to do, what went wrong, if you know it, and then here are 2 things that I think that we can do to fix this solution if we can, but if we can't even fix it, moving forward, what did we learn from it? And call it a wrapper of owning it. If you own it, it's yours, and you can take that and say, look, we owned it. We're going to move on to something better next time. So I think that's something that I've always taken that mindset of, yes, when you raise your hand, there's an opportunity for you to fail or learn from it. But if you do have something that doesn't work as well as you can, own it and move on to the next thing, and you'll be better off.
Yeah. And just to wrap up, like you had asked specific skills, that's a skill. You learn it, you work on it. It's uncomfortable, but you do it anyway. And the more you do it, you get better at it. And it's organizational courage and accountability, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, man. That accountability is something that not a lot of people look and acknowledge, specifically in the professional sense. Like with the younger generations, we learn as we go. But I feel like with conversations like these, we can have like a pre-red flag saying like, hey, this might be a problem. Let's establish it now. And when we get presented with an actual situation, we'll be better equipped, we'll be better prepared, and of course, we'll handle it way better.
well, and let's be honest, every leadership role in an organization requires you to be accountable for something. So if they can see you demonstrating that earlier, you are going to be more likely to be promoted than others who haven't. They always look for a known quantity. So if they know that you've got courage and they know that you're accountable and you're already demonstrating those types of leadership qualities, they have no problems putting you in charge of larger stuff.
Mm-hmm.
From the sense of having this this past question answered, this reminds me of something I learned in high school from one of my math teachers, and I remember she specifically told me always be uncomfortable. Don't ever stay in the comfort zone, because if you're always in the comfort zone, there won't be a lot of change. You're probably gonna like either stay where you're at or you won't see any difference come out. But if you do something that's uncomfortable or something you really want to accomplish, you have to put yourself out there. And I know it's very tough to do that, even personally, like let's just say talking to like recruiters or filling up applications or even just planning on like what you want to do in the future may sound uncomfortable, but I feel like we always have to have that mindset of you need to like do what you want, and if it's uncomfortable, then it's fine. We all have to do it at some point if you really want to do it. Now, for the last question here that we have here, it's for you, my bad, Mr. Nelson. So the question is, what type of posts should students make on their LinkedIn profile to get attention, to get job opportunities? Now, I know a lot of students, I'm also, part of the Gen Z where we use Twitter, Facebook, what's it called, all these social medias, even Snapchat. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will probably use LinkedIn as like a social media platform, like selfies, trips that they took, or even like having like their pets part of their profile. But I feel like LinkedIn is a little bit different, correct?
Absolutely. So you've hit on the number one thing, Martin, that is there are a lot of things on LinkedIn that can help you, but the biggest one that will hurt you is treating LinkedIn like a normal social media account. This is your professional resume, and I would treat it as such. My personal stuff never goes on there. So that's the first piece. And then let's talk a bit about what LinkedIn is used for. And then I think it helps to define for folks what they're putting out there. So in recruiting, every recruiter in America has back-end access to LinkedIn. They pay big money for it. What that means is, as a recruiter, I can see every person on LinkedIn and their entire profile without having to be connected to them, right? So this is the number one tool that is used by every organization in the country to find people. So what you don't want is, as they're going out looking for people, them not to be able to find what it is that you do really, really well. So we want to make sure that you've got a great brand out there. So what is it that you're better at than anybody else? And if you don't have one, start working on it. Whenever they go and look at your LinkedIn profile, they can go look and see what you've commented on and what you've posted. So if they like you, the very first thing they're going to go do, or if you're even set up, and I'll tell you, I do this every time. If I know I'm interviewing somebody, I always go to their LinkedIn and I read over their LinkedIn and make sure, because you can put more information on a LinkedIn than I can on a resume. And I can get a feel for more detail around maybe websites or comments or posts or things that they've engaged in to make sure that it aligns with the things I'm seeing on their resume and on their profile. So if I'm looking at you as a data analyst and I go out there and you've got posts related to staying up to date on current data analytics and sharing some of those with some of your colleagues, well, then I know that not only do you have it on your resume, but it's probably something that you're invested in to stay up on, right? So it's not only from a posting perspective, I wouldn't expect folks to post very much unless they're creating original content around their area that corresponds to their brand. But I would expect them to be liking and sharing things, contributing to their, we call it community of practice. So I'm an HR guy and I'm a data guy. I share a lot of things around HR and around data and consulting, because those are things that I'm passionate about and I'm in a group of other people who are passionate about, and we talk about geek stuff. That's the type of thing that employers will be looking for people on their posts when they go and look at them. So hopefully that's a little helpful to understand when we talk about what LinkedIn is used for. It is used for a professional, I almost call it a matching service. All the recruiters are using LinkedIn to determine how you're going to help that manager solve their problem. But it's also used from a social perspective around best practice sharing for those in certain industries. So is that helpful?
Yes, sir, it is.
Absolutely, it is. You know, I think this type of feedback is very influential, especially with people who are just starting out their LinkedIn platforms. You know, we want to start creating content. We want to start putting ourselves out there, displaying our most professional self. And I feel like what you talked about, Mr. Nelson, was very intricate in the way of like webbing everything together. You know, you want to put yourself out there professionally, but keep it professional. Don't get personal. Don't start putting things about your dog, your family, your grandma, whatnot. Just keep it professional. Do projects that you've been working on, new jobs, new promotions, you know, things, tactics that you've accomplished at work. You had a problem, you developed a new skill, even LinkedIn Learning, the project that we're doing now. Those types of certifications, Ms. Bett mentioned in previous webinars that those types of certifications will get you noticed 100%, whether it be communication, setting boundaries. I deal with a lot of mental health, and I am now connecting with people because of those certifications based off of the things that I watch. I'm connecting with a lot more within the field that I want to go to, within business, marketing, management, you know. So I really think that you hit it right on the money, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Dr. Spencer, do you have anything to add?
I will add one thing. I think it's important to be consistent on your activity on LinkedIn. Remember, we're fighting an algorithm here. So in order to stay in the top and in people's mindset, you need to make sure that you're engaging. The person who goes on a weekly basis and adds comments about articles or shares articles is going to be at the top of the list versus the person who jumps on every 3 months. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be on LinkedIn every single day, but you do need to kind of find a cadence that works right for you. So if it is something where you want to check it on a daily basis because you're really in the current search for a new position, that's something. But even when you're not searching for a position, even when you're not, consider logging in at least monthly and sharing an article about something that's meaningful to you and your career path. Because again, you're fighting against hundreds of other people who are looking for the same position. You're trying to remain remain relevant. So find your cadence, whatever it works with you, and stick with it. I think that's important.
Yeah, let me add a couple more things to it as well. So LinkedIn, just like any other social media platform, is constantly evolving. You know, as they begin to see more and more people utilizing the platform, they're adding more features to it as well. So one of the newest features that is now available to LinkedIn users is the story section, where you can actually write what you're passionate about. And of course, there's limit on the number of words that characters that you can use in that story, but use that feature to tell a story about yourself, professionally speaking. Of course, we don't want to know how many dogs you have and how many cats you have at home, but just to kind of put yourself out there and talk about based on what you've heard from other colleagues, coworkers, students. Sometimes you get those type of feedback. Oh, you're good at this. You're good at that. Just pay attention to those things and make that become part of your story, because now you've got validation from your coworkers or colleagues and other students as well. And that needs to go in your story on the LinkedIn. So because we're talking about LinkedIn, I think it's a great time for me to kind of plug in our next session as well. Our next our next webinar is scheduled for April the 25th, same time as today, 11:45 to 12:45 Central Time. But the interesting thing about the next session is that we are going to have a guest speaker from LinkedIn, who is a North America lead for LinkedIn, who connects higher education and workforce development, governments, and workforce development entities as well. So he travels all over the world, giving talks about, the story, the interesting partnerships that he has actually managed to connect. And also, I mean, you're talking about someone who really lives, breathes the word LinkedIn. And along with him, I'm going to have some guest speakers that are going to be part of the Millennial and Gen Z group that are going to come in and really put him to task with questions that they're going to be asking him. So make sure to put it on your calendar and tune in on the 25th of April. That'll also serve as our, I guess, the conclusion session for our series as well, workforce development series as well. At this point, what I'd like to do is also, we have a good number of people watching us on YouTube. This is a great time for y'all to post some questions. We've got some experts sitting here and talking to Darren. What you shared about what people need to do with their LinkedIn was just so on the mark, so I would love for people who are watching us to take advantage of this opportunity and post some questions. We can go ahead and display them on the screen, and they get to actually interact. And if anyone wants to join the stream, they're most welcome to, and just put a message on the chat, and we'll share you the screen, share you the link that you can join the stream as well. So we're open to that as well. Let's see what happens. Let's see if there's any questions coming through. I'm looking forward to getting some really interesting questions at this point, at the end of this really charged up conversation we just had. So in the meantime, Gail and Martin, this is your opportunity to throw any other questions at the speakers today.
Absolutely. So you guys just recently talked about like the type of posts that students should make and like mentoring, right? So I do want to like touch base on endorsements on LinkedIn. I was very new when the first person, it was Aaron, the previous speaker, who endorsed me for one of my skills. Now I want to ask you, Mr. Nelson, does anyone look at that when you're hiring? Like, does anyone actually look at the supporting skills that other people have done for you?
So the best part you're about to learn is I'm pretty honest about stuff, and the answer is not really. Here's what I would say. It depends. So for instance, I have 30 or 40 skills up there. I also have thousands of connections. So over time, you'll start to see the statistical piece come out, and you can go look at my top 5, and it's got hundreds and hundreds of endorsements. Well, that probably means I'm probably pretty solid in those things. Now, whether or not that's again, a lot of people, it may or may not be a real evaluation. What I would say is recommendations are good, both given and received. I actually always look to see how many recommendations you've given, because it tells me that you're invested in other people, which is a quality I look for. I actually look at volunteer organizations that people work for, because to me, that tells me the things they're passionate about outside of just their job. It's always nice to see when people are passionate about something. Mm-hmm. And then I would say the last piece is I usually look at, and we kind of talked about it, just accomplishments. If I don't see anything other than here's the job I worked at and how long I was there and here was my job duties, this is probably not somebody who's going to come into my organization and kill it. So those are the endorsements to me. I think if you have bunches of them, it'll start to kind of sort out or float to the top. But by then, I think your accomplishments speak way more than the endorsements that you get.
Great point. Okay, good note. I'll make sure I have a mental note of that. Okay, we just got a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I want to bolster Darren there. I will scroll down and read the recommendations that you've both given and received. I think that is some real talk, And so I like to see if someone has and has given recommendations. So I agree. I kind of scroll past some of those endorsements and I look at the actual real words that people have used to describe you.
Good to know. I really did not know about that one, but hey, that's why we're here. We're here to learn. So the question that just came in on the chat was, this is going back to the mentor topic. If someone is willing to mentor, is it better to ask in person or online?
So that is a great question. I would say that for the most part, it's better to have a conversation. And if you can, in person is probably better because there is real-time feedback. And I think a lot of people agree that sometimes the feedback that we have that's nonverbal is almost more important than the words that we're saying. And so you can't always get that online. However, I also understand that we live in a modern workforce and most people are working remotely, and you don't always have the ability to do that. So I would say that for the most part, it's not terribly important how you ask, but you must ask. And if you can set the stage and make it so that you've had an opportunity to talk to them first and then bridge that conversation about being a mentor, do so. But understand that it's important to ask. If you can do it, do it, and that'll solve most of the problem.
Great point there. Mr. Nelson, do you have anything to contribute?
I think he's hit it right. From that perspective, I agree with him.
I want to add something more to that. So it's important to ask, but it's also important to make some observations before you ask, because you really want to approach the right person who has the right mindset to be a mentor. Mentoring is not everyone's cup of tea. Either that or they have no interest in doing that. Everyone has different interests, let's not forget. And so make some observations first. If you begin to notice that colleague, supervisor, whoever it is showing some special interest in developing you as a worker, as an employee, as a professional, just make some observations for a while and then just approach that person and say, thank you for helping me out. I noticed that I appreciate your interest in me, and I'd like to continue to keep this relationship where I can come to you for some advice, career advice, or any type of complex questions that I come across that I don't know who to turn to in the workplace. That's when your mentor-mentee relationship would be cemented well, and you're also making sure that you're approaching the right person for that question as well. Yes.
Absolutely, Ms. Bat. You targeted a really good point. And that's something that I have done in the past, that in order to get my mentor-mentee relationships, didn't actually get approached by them. They just knew that I was so passionate with the questions, that I was eager to learn. They just started being more open and receptive and like started setting up meeting times, set aside an hour in their workday just to speak to me. So I highly recommend and endorse what you just said right now.
And the other thing to remember is that both of the speakers have actually mentioned that it's important to have 2 to 3 mentors. Don't just settle down to just one mentor that might fulfill your need in one area, because professionally, everyone has different set of needs. So if you identify someone else who is also beginning to show interest in developing you, then go to them for something different. You know what I'm saying? So because everyone brings a different set of skill sets to the table, and your needs might vary depending on what it is that you want to get. So keep that in mind as well, that you can have more than one mentor based on your professional needs. And that's important to keep in mind as well. Martin had another question. So Martin, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yes. So to Dr. Spencer, Mr. Nelson, back to the question I asked about the post about LinkedIn now. Currently, I'm doing engineering, and as an engineering student, we do a lot of projects. And would it be appropriate, like for like a student like myself, to, let's say, working on a project, would it be appropriate to have that as a post, or should I not, post that as you previously mentioned, both of you have answered that, keeping it with comments, likes, and since it's not a social media platform, I just want to have a clear up about this.
So this is actually a great question, Martin, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm in consulting. I have to be really careful about the confidentiality of the projects that I work on, right? And the people who may be running that project at a different level, maybe really specific about what I can or can't say about that project. What I would suggest to you is once you complete that project, then you go post that as an accomplishment on your LinkedIn, provided everybody's okay with that. But to make an ongoing post about it, that may not be something that the folks on the project are okay with. And so you have to be really careful about that, because you'd hate to be calling out kudos only to realize that you violated a confidentiality agreement in your company, and now you have to go find a new job, right? So I would be really careful about that. Again, you definitely want to put it on accomplishment. Make sure that anything you're going to talk about, you have the proper right to talk about. And I would vet it. I would actually vet it through whoever the project leaders are before you did that.
Yeah, that clears up a lot with your answer, Mr. Nelson. And I didn't really think about the whole part about confidential, about if something's confidential. Right now, I'm not there yet, working with with big companies, but these are just student projects that I was mentioning. But I'll keep that in mind, because in the future maybe I will be working in a big project that I can't mention, and it's good to know even for our students as well, because you don't know who's listening, and you don't know what violations there are.
Well, and you just said you're a student working on student projects for corporations. That corporation likely has a media policy that says that you're not allowed to mention their name on any media without their permission, right?
Yeah.
Irrelevant to whether you're a student or not. So again, there's my HRE hat on for you. I hate to see folks with great intentions end up in bad spots.
No, we have several students that are, watching us right now. So these are all really, really important, I guess things to remember and important advice to pass on. Speaking of advice, another thing that I wanted to add as far as mentor-mentee relationship is that if you have a really good mentor and they're serving you well, make sure that you don't overutilize them. Because mentors are making time for you because they have an intrinsic interest in developing you as a professional. They might also be mentoring several other students or several other people. Don't ever forget that. And so use your relationship really wisely, to the extent where you don't go to them for every little challenge or problem or or questions that comes up to your mind, because they're also really busy professionals trying to make time for you. Keep that in mind. And also, if you're going to be listing them as your reference in your job application, always make sure to get their approval first. Don't just take it for granted. This person is, interested in developing me, so that person will be more than happy to write a recommendation letter for me, even if I go to them like 24 hours in advance or 5 hours in advance and say, oh, I need a recommendation letter. Can you put this together for me? And some of us experience that all the time from the mentor side of it. So just be mindful of all of that. And LinkedIn as well. Use LinkedIn very discreetly and wisely, to the extent where you just focus on your professional aspect of your life, and don't just make the assumption that everyone that's connected to you or following you is interested in knowing your personal life. Because there's lots of other social media platforms that you're on that can be used for this. So LinkedIn has to be dedicated specifically for developing yourself career-wise and professionally. So with that, I know we're coming to the end of the conversation. I think it was extremely charged up, as I expected, and everyone had such important feedback and input to share as well. And I believe any questions that we were expecting from the audience is we've answered all of them. Yes, Darren, please go ahead and do that. Yeah, I think Darren has something else to add.
Well, no, now that we're getting to the end of this, I just want to say to everybody on the call, one of the things that you do need to do is link in with people, because at the end of the day, the recruiters can see everybody, but people who are closer to linking in with them on certain levels come to the top of the list. So you need to link in with other people, and you need to link in with other people who either have jobs or networks, and that's probably not your friends. It's probably your parents and your parents' friends. So what I will offer is this, and I do this for all the students I ever talk to. I have about 4,000 connections. Send me a LinkedIn request. At a bare minimum, what that will do is give you some access to be able to link in with recruiters at organizations that you may be interested in, or you may be able to see some more people. So everybody who's attending this call today, if you go on LinkedIn and send me a LinkedIn request after today, I will accept it. And I think you'll find that'll help expand your network on people you can start to see and link in with.
Absolutely. Really valid point and good advice as well. So I want to thank everyone who's on the panel today for sharing important thoughts and advice, and also great questions. The student employees that are on the panel today, you're actually doing really well in terms of learning, because you guys were chosen because of the number of courses that you've completed on LinkedIn Learning. So keep up the learning. And this experience today will also serve you well as you move forward. And this event was being live cast on YouTube, so there will be a link for anyone who wants to grab it later, or share that as part of the discussion, or listen to it again later and grab some important points that you might have missed out today. And as far as the next session on the 25th, tune in for that. That'll be another really interesting discussion that'll happen. And the cool part about that next session is that I want to have our student employees have an opportunity to use the link and come and discuss with the panel members live. So be on the lookout for that. We may share that link while the discussion is going on, and whoever wants to join, make sure that you're not in your bedroom in front of your bed, because your video will be on. So make sure you're in a good setting where there's not much noise there behind you or people walking around constantly. But we'll give that opportunity to students that may want to tune into the discussion live next time. But for today, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.